You already know how to start. You always have. Starting has never been your weakness. You've begun projects, routines, goals, dreams, and versions of yourself more times than you can count. The real challenge has never been the beginning. The real battle starts later. When the excitement fades, when the results slow down, when the reward still feels far away, and when your mind quietly begins convincing you that maybe it isn't worth it anymore, that maybe you aren't meant for it, that maybe you should quit. But deep inside you, there's a memory. A sharp one. You remember the moments when you walked away from something just before it was about to work. That business you dropped when it was finally gaining traction. That gym routine you abandoned right before your body was about to change. That skill you stopped practicing right before it could have become your strength. That version of you that was seconds away from breaking through, but you left them behind. This audiobook exists for one purpose, to make sure you never do that again. Here's the truth that most people never hear in their entire lives. The moment you feel the strongest urge to quit is usually the moment right before you are about to discover your next level. That's not philosophy, that's psychology, that's biology, that's reality. Breakthroughs don't feel like inspiration. They feel like pressure, they feel like exhaustion, they feel like boredom, they feel like nothing is changing. They feel like the same day on repeat. They feel like a mind that whispers, "What's the point?" right before everything starts to shift. Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they misinterpret the signals. When progress slows down, when growth becomes invisible, when effort feels heavier, they assume something is wrong with them. But the truth is that these moments are not signs to stop. They are signs that you are getting close. You are entering the territory where most people give up. You are walking through the stage where results hide, not because they disappeared, but because they are building underneath the surface. Every major transformation has a quiet period, a phase where nothing looks different, even though everything is changing. A phase your brain hates because your brain is addicted to visible progress. When it doesn't see that progress, it panics. It wants comfort. It wants ease. It wants to go back to the familiar. And that's exactly the moment where you've quit most of your past dreams. Not because you were incapable, but because you didn't know what the struggle really meant. This audiobook will teach you what you were never taught. How to recognize the moment before a breakthrough and push through it instead of walking away from it. How to train your mind to stay steady when your emotions try to pull you back. How to understand the psychology behind quitting, the habits that break the cycle, and the identity needed to cross the threshold you always stop at. You are going to learn why progress slows before it accelerates, why your brain resists success, why the final stretch feels the hardest, why your identity fights change when you're closest to leveling up, and most importantly, how to become someone who doesn't collapse in the last mile. There is a version of you that you've never met yet, a version that only appears when you push beyond the point where you used to stop, a version that only arrives when you refuse to quit one more time. That version is waiting for you on the other side of consistency, discomfort, doubt, and slow progress. That version is waiting for you where you've rarely reached before. The edge. Many people live entire lives without ever discovering what they could have been. They held on just a little longer. They quit 2 steps before the reward. They stop 1 repetition before the growth. They abandoned the journey at the exact point where the universe was finally about to give them the breakthrough they'd been working for. You don't have to be one of them. You don't have to repeat the pattern that has followed you for years. You don't have to let your old identity dictate your future. This is your chance to understand yourself deeply, to take control of your patterns, and to rewrite the story of how you deal with pressure, doubt, and silence. This audiobook is not about hype. It's about mastery. It's about understanding the mental traps that make you quit early and the strategies that help you push through the final wall. It's about building the resilience required to stay the course, even when your mind tells you to run. It's about transforming the way you see progress so that you don't lose faith when it matters the most. By the end of this journey, you won't just understand why you quit before the breakthrough. You'll know exactly how to stop it. You'll learn how people who win think, act, and persist. You'll discover the mindset that turns pressure into fuel, doubt into direction, and consistency into power. And as always, if this audiobook brings you value, subscribe to Prestige Audiobooks for daily new, deep, powerful mindset audiobooks. Like, share, and comment to support the growth of this channel and help more people rise above their limits. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Invisible Wall Before Breakthroughs. You have faced this wall before. Every time you've tried to change your life, improve yourself, chase a dream, or build something meaningful, you've collided with this invisible barrier. It never announces itself. It doesn't come with warnings. It doesn't show up in the beginning when motivation is high, when excitement is fresh, when your vision feels clear and possible. No, this wall waits. It waits for the moment when you've invested effort, built momentum, pushed yourself past comfort, and moved far enough away from your old self that turning back becomes tempting. This wall is the point in your journey where everything suddenly feels heavier. The progress you were seeing slows down. The clarity you had becomes clouded. Your energy dips. Your confidence shakes. Your mind begins whispering the same old doubts you thought you had outgrown. And you start thinking that maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe you're forcing something that wasn't meant for you. Maybe it's better to stop now before you waste more time. But this wall isn't a sign that you're going the wrong way. It's a sign you're close. Breakthroughs are always guarded by resistance. Not sometimes. Not occasionally. Always. The invisible wall is nature's test. It separates people who want change from people who commit to change. It filters those who crave transformation from those who earn it. And most importantly, it's the phase that determines whether you keep repeating the same life or finally level up into a different one. Here's the truth you were never taught. Every meaningful journey has a moment where progress becomes invisible. It's the point where your effort increases but the results don't. This phase is not failure. It's not stagnation. It's restructuring. It's your mind, body, and habits rewiring themselves behind the scenes. It's the foundation strengthening before the visible growth returns. But because you don't see the growth yet, you assume it isn't happening. This is where most people stop. To understand this wall, you need to understand yourself. In the beginning of any journey, your mind rewards you. It gives you dopamine for making plans, starting new routines, imagining possibilities, and taking the first few steps. It feels good. It feels exciting. That chemical rush tricks you into believing that progress should always feel that way. But the biology behind motivation is not built to support long-term change. Dopamine peaks at the start and then fades. When the excitement dies, your mind enters withdrawal. It wants to return to comfort. It wants to escape effort. This withdrawal is the invisible wall. What you call laziness, inconsistency, or lack of discipline is often just your brain craving the old dopamine highs. The moment your progress stops giving your mind that chemical reward, it tries to push you back into your old patterns. Not because those patterns were good for you, but because they are familiar. Familiarity is safety to the brain. Change is danger, and breakthroughs require change. Imagine this clearly. You are climbing a mountain. At the bottom, everything is bright. You feel strong. The air is easy to breathe. But as you climb higher, the air becomes thinner. The steps become harder. The visibility gets lower. You reach a part of the mountain where you can't see the peak yet. You can't see the view. You can't see how far you've come. All you can see is fog. That fog is the invisible wall, and because you can't see what's ahead, you assume the peak is too far, so you consider going back. But if you could see through the fog, you would realize the peak is only a few minutes away. This fog of doubt, exhaustion, and slow progress is what stops most people from ever reaching what was already within reach. There is a painful pattern repeating in your life, and deep down you know it. You have quit goals that were actually working. You have walked away from progress that was building quietly. You have abandoned routines right before they were about to become identity. You have stepped back from opportunities that were turning into breakthroughs, and you didn't leave because you failed. You left because you misread the wall. You thought the struggle meant stop, but the struggle meant continue. The invisible wall appears for everyone. The athlete training for their next level, the student studying for mastery, the entrepreneur pushing through a slow season, the person rebuilding discipline after years of inconsistency, the individual healing from emotional wounds. Every one of them hits the wall. The ones who break through aren't better, they just don't misinterpret it. The wall does not mean turn around, it means keep going. Here's the deeper truth: you haven't failed in the past because you were incapable. You failed because you didn't know what was happening inside you. You didn't understand the psychology behind breakthroughs. You didn't understand that growth hides before it appears. You didn't know that your brain actively tries to stop you from changing. You didn't know that fatigue, doubt, boredom, and slow progress were actually signs that you were reaching the edge of who you used to be. Every time you hit the edge, your old identity tries to pull you back. And every time you believed it. But not this time. This time you're going to understand the invisible wall for what it truly is, the final threshold before transformation, the last test, the doorway, the point where your old self and your new self collide. Your job is simple: do not turn back, do not slow down, do not trust the illusions created by fatigue. When the wall appears, recognize it immediately. Tell yourself, this is the test. This is the moment that destroys most people. This is the moment that stopped the old me. But this time, I'm going through it. Because the breakthrough you are chasing is not far away. It's not months away. It's not impossible. It's closer than you think. But only if you keep walking through the fog. Chapter 2. Why progress feels slowest right before it explodes. There is a moment in every journey where it feels like your effort has stopped working. You show up, you do the work, you stay disciplined, and yet nothing looks different. You feel stuck in the same spot. The progress you were making suddenly slows down to almost nothing. The excitement you used to feel disappears. The motivation you started with fades. And confusion begins to grow inside you. You start wondering if you're doing something wrong, if you've lost your touch, if you've hit your limit, or if the path you're on simply isn't meant for you. But this slowdown is not a sign of failure. It is the stage right before everything changes. Progress is not linear. It doesn't move in straight, predictable lines. It grows quietly, invisibly, beneath the surface, until one day it reaches a point where it has no choice but to burst upward and become visible. That explosion of growth may look sudden, but it never is. It is the result of every quiet, boring, repetitive step you took when nothing seemed to be happening. But because you don't see the build-up, you assume there is no build-up. That is the lie your mind tells you. Think about a seed planted underground. For days or weeks, you see nothing. No sprout, no leaf, no movement. If you didn't know better, you would think nothing is happening. But under the soil, the seed is expanding, cracking open, building roots, gathering strength. All of this is hidden. Only when the roots are strong enough does the plant break through, and when it finally breaks through, it seems sudden. But it was not sudden. It was inevitable. Your progress works the same way. The problem is that you mistake invisibility for inactivity. You think slow means stuck. You think quiet means dead. You think the absence of visible growth means the absence of growth itself. But almost always, slow progress is hidden progress. Quiet progress is foundational progress. This is the part of the journey where most of the transformation is happening, just not in ways you can see yet. You don't notice the internal rewiring. You don't feel the micro improvements. You don't see the quiet strengthening of your discipline. You don't recognize the subtle changes in your identity. You don't notice the way your old habits are weakening, the way your resilience is growing, the way your tolerance for discomfort is expanding. These are not big, flashy changes. These are structural changes, and structural changes always come before visible changes. This is why progress feels slowest right before it explodes. Your mind expects instant results. It expects constant feedback. It expects visible proof, but breakthroughs don't work like that. Nature doesn't work like that. Growth doesn't work like that. Instead, it builds silently and then releases loudly. Let's imagine an example. A person decides to build a new routine, reading every day for an hour. For the first few days, the mind feels good. The progress feels real because the behavior is new. But after a week or two, the excitement fades. The brain stops rewarding the effort. The routine becomes ordinary. It begins to feel slow, boring, unproductive. The person doesn't see any dramatic shift in their thinking yet. They don't feel smarter. They don't feel transformed. And because they don't see results quickly, they start thinking the routine isn't working. They quit right before the cumulative knowledge starts connecting, right before their thinking begins sharpening, right before the internal growth becomes external. You've done this in different areas of your life. You've built momentum and then stopped because it felt too slow. You've been on the edge of transformation and assumed you were far away. You've been steps away from breakthroughs and believed you were stuck. But you weren't stuck. You were simply entering the quiet phase, the phase that most people don't recognize, the phase where quitting feels justified, even though continuing is what would have changed everything. Progress slows before it explodes because the brain resists the unfamiliar. Your mind prefers the way things have always been. It is comfortable with your old habits, your old routines, your old identity. When you start changing, your brain fights back. Not because the new version of you is bad, but because it is unfamiliar. And the brain associates unfamiliar with unsafe. So it tries to slow you down. It tries to discourage you. It tries to convince you that the slow phase means you're not moving at all. This resistance is the friction you feel right before leveling up. It's not a sign to stop. It's a sign your brain is adapting. The slowdown is part of the process. It's your mind recalibrating. It's the identity shift stabilizing. It's your emotional system adjusting to new demands. It's your discipline strengthening beneath the surface. But because none of this is visible, your brain misreads it as failure. Let's take another example, someone trying to get fit. In the beginning, the body responds quickly. A little workout here, a small reduction in junk food there, and changes appear. But after a few weeks, the body enters adaptation. It stops showing changes because it is internally preparing for the next stage of transformation. This is the point where most people quit. They assume they've reached a plateau, but in reality their body is stabilizing so it can push through to the next level. If they continue, they break through dramatically. If they stop, they lose everything they built. The same pattern repeats in studying, business, personal growth, emotional healing, building a skill, practicing discipline, or starting any long-term path. You rise, then slow, then rise even higher, if you stay consistent. But here is the heartbreaking truth. Most people quit during the slow phase, not because they can't do the work, but because they don't understand what the slow phase means. They misjudge it, they fear it, they run from it, they think it's the end, but it's actually the beginning of the breakthrough they've been chasing. Progress feels slowest right before it explodes because you are closest to the shift. You are closest to the moment where consistency compounds. You are closest to the point where the effort you put in for the weeks suddenly connects and reveals itself. The pressure you feel, the doubt you face, the silence you hear, These are not signs of failure. These are the final signals that your breakthrough is on its way. So when progress slows, do not panic. Do not question your path. Do not assume you're stuck. This is the universe telling you, keep going. You are almost there. Hold the line. Stay on your path. Because the explosion of growth you want is closer than you can see. Chapter 4. The pattern of stopping at the edge. There is a pattern in your life that you may have never examined closely, yet it has shaped everything you've accomplished and everything you've abandoned. It's a pattern of starting strong, building momentum, pushing through the first layers of resistance, and then stopping at the edge. Stopping right when the process becomes real. Stopping when the journey becomes difficult in a different way. Stopping at the exact moment where progress is about to cross over into transformation. This pattern doesn't appear randomly. It shows up in predictable ways. It shows up at the same stage, with the same feelings, the same excuses, and the same emotional triggers. And until you understand it, it quietly repeats itself, stealing opportunities you were meant to live. This chapter is about exposing that pattern completely. Think about your goals over the years, not the goals you never started, the ones you actually committed to. Think about the routines you kept, the plans you wrote down, the dreams you chased for days or weeks or months. Picture them clearly. You didn't fail at them in the beginning. You didn't struggle on day one. You didn't collapse at the starting line. In the beginning, you were strong, motivated, clear, confident. You moved with purpose. You felt connected to the vision of who you wanted to become. And you made progress. Slowly but surely you moved forward. But then every time you reached a familiar point, the point where everything suddenly shifted, the excitement reduced, the progress became harder, the reward didn't feel close enough, the routine turned into responsibility, the journey turned into reality. This is the edge, and this is where your pattern activates. You didn't stop because you were tired. You didn't stop because you were incapable. You didn't stop because the goal was wrong. You stopped because you reached the threshold where growth requires identity change, and identity change is uncomfortable. The edge is the moment when your old self begins fighting for survival. At the edge, your discipline is tested by doubt. Your excitement is tested by boredom. Your confidence is tested by uncertainty. Your long-term vision is tested by short-term temptation. And your emotional endurance is tested by a quiet, heavy pressure that makes you question everything. This is the point in your journey where your old identity tries to drag you backward. Your brain begins producing convincing thoughts. This isn't working anymore. I'm not seeing enough progress. There's no point in continuing. I'll try something else instead. I'll restart later when I'm ready. I need a break. This path isn't for me. These thoughts feel real in the moment. They feel rational. They feel honest. But what you're experiencing is not truth. It is resistance. The resistance that shows up only at the edge. The resistance that appears when your old routines are dying and your new routines haven't fully formed yet. It is the psychological chaos that comes with change. And because you don't recognize it, you believe it. So you step back, not fully, just enough. You take a break, you slow down, you reduce the effort. You tell yourself it's temporary, but temporary becomes permanent. The break becomes a backward slide. The backward slide becomes disengagement, and before long, you quit. But quitting doesn't feel like quitting. It feels like relief. That relief tricks you into believing you made the right choice. The moment you stop, the pressure melts. The doubt quiets. The discomfort fades. Your mind relaxes. Your old identity is safe again. And you misinterpret that safety as correctness. This is the exact pattern that has sabotaged the biggest breakthroughs of your life. And what makes this pattern dangerous is how subtle it is. You don't quit loudly. You don't quit with a dramatic announcement. You quit quietly through small decisions, little delays, tiny withdrawals, missed days, compromises you promised to fix later. And each small withdrawal moves you one step further from the edge and one step closer to the comfort you were trying to escape. You think you're taking a breath. You're actually losing your momentum. And momentum is everything. Momentum is the invisible force that carries you through doubt. It's the energy that pushes you beyond hesitation. It's the internal trust that comes from showing up consistently. When you stop at the edge, you don't just lose progress, you lose momentum. And rebuilding momentum takes far more strength than maintaining it. The painful truth is that your life could already look different right now if you hadn't stopped at the edge so many times. You were closer than you realized. You were steps away. You were building the right habits, the right routines, the right mindset. You were becoming someone different. And then, the moment your growth demanded more from you, your old identity pulled you back with excuses that sounded like logic. You weren't weak. You were unaware. You didn't understand the pattern. You didn't recognize the signals. You didn't know that the struggle you were feeling was not a sign to stop, but the exact sign that you needed to keep going. The edge is not a dead end. It is the border between who you were and who you're becoming. On one side is your old life, comfortable, predictable, stagnant. On the other side is your new life, unfamiliar, powerful, challenging, rewarding. But the edge between them is uncomfortable. And because it's uncomfortable, you've mistaken it for impossible. Not anymore. Recognizing this pattern breaks it. Understanding the psychology behind your urge to quit removes its power. When you know the edge is coming, you prepare for it. When you know how your mind reacts, you resist the temptation to retreat. When you know the difference between real exhaustion and identity resistance, you choose the right response. Instead of stepping back, you step forward. Instead of slowing down, you stay consistent. Instead of doubting yourself, you trust the process. Instead of abandoning the path, you push through the discomfort. And when you push through that discomfort, something incredible happens. The edge transforms into a breakthrough. The fog lifts, the pressure loosens, the progress returns, and you step into a new level of yourself that was always waiting for you on the other side. You have a long history of stopping at the edge, but you don't have to repeat that history. You can rewrite it right now, because the moment you stop abandoning the journey at the edge is the moment your life finally starts moving in the direction you've always wanted. Chapter 5. The Plateau That Tests Your Identity. There is a stage in every journey that feels even more frustrating than failure. It's not the beginning, where things feel new. It's not the middle, where challenges are expected. It's the plateau, an eerie, silent stage where nothing seems to move, nothing seems to change, and every effort you make feels like it falls into a bottomless void. The plateau is the place where most people decide they're not good enough, not talented enough, or not meant for the path they've chosen. But what they rarely realize is that the plateau is not the end of progress. It is the test that determines who you will become. The plateau is not simply a lack of results. It is a collision between your old identity and your new one. When you first start working towards something, discipline, fitness, business, mindset, growth, you operate with energy borrowed from hope. You move because you believe in what's possible. In the beginning, your identity hasn't changed yet. You're still the old you attempting to become something new, and that disconnect is what fuels excitement. You want change, you want progress, you want transformation. You're chasing what you're not yet. But then the plateau arrives. The plateau is the point where your new habits have taken root, but haven't produced visible results. It's where the effort becomes consistent, but the outward progress becomes invisible. It's where the changes happening inside you have not manifested outside you yet. And this creates a psychological gap, a confusing space where you are no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. This gap is where your identity gets tested. Your old self wants to return. Your new self wants to emerge. And the plateau becomes the battlefield between them. The plateau makes you question everything: your path, your goals, your abilities, your purpose. You start thinking thoughts that feel like truth, but are actually resistance. This isn't working anymore. I don't see any improvement. Nothing is changing. I should be further by now. Maybe I'm wasting my time. This pace is too slow. I don't feel any different. These thoughts are not observations. They are the voice of your old identity trying to pull you back into comfort. The plateau exposes the part of you that wants the reward without the delay. It reveals the side of you that wants instant progress, and when that progress stops being visible, your old identity senses an opportunity to reclaim control. But here's what the plateau really is: the final strengthening of your foundation. Think about what happens when someone decides to get in shape. At first, the body responds quickly. Water weight drops, muscles activate, energy increases. This early progress feels rewarding. But after a few weeks, everything slows down. The body stops showing visible change because it is stabilizing the internal systems: metabolism, muscle engagement, endurance recovery cycles. These internal changes don't show on the outside yet, but they are crucial. They set the stage for the next explosion of growth. The plateau is not stagnation, it is stabilization. It is your mind, your habits, your routines, and your identity adjusting to the new demands you've placed on them. It is the part of your journey where your new identity begins to take root. And roots grow in silence. They grow underground. They grow without applause. During the plateau, you are building the consistency that will later support your breakthrough. But because the build-up is invisible, your brain interprets it as failure. You forget that the plateau is the only stage where mastery is built. The person who pushes through the plateau becomes unshakable. They become someone who doesn't depend on visible progress to stay committed. They become someone who is driven by identity, not emotion. They become the kind of person who wins in the long term, not the short term. Most people never experience mastery because they quit during the plateau. They think the plateau means nothing is happening. They think the silence means the journey has stopped. They assume their lack of visible progress means the end of growth. They don't realize they are standing at the doorway of transformation. The plateau is not a dead end. It is a waiting room. It is the universe evaluating your seriousness. It's asking you one question: are you doing this because you want the result, or because you want the identity behind the result? If you're only chasing the result, you'll quit. But if you're committed to becoming the person who deserves that result, you'll stay. You'll keep moving. You'll hold the line even when the outcome is quiet. Identity is not built by excitement. Identity is built by endurance. Think about elite athletes. Champions don't become champions because training is always exciting. They don't win because progress is always visible. They don't succeed because they feel motivated every day. They win because they understand the plateau. They know that the plateau is the most important phase of preparation. They know that consistency during silence creates dominance later. The same is true for entrepreneurs who spent months building something without seeing returns. Writers who kept typing even when every page felt empty. Students who kept studying even when nothing made sense yet. People rebuilding discipline who showed up daily even when their old habits tried to drag them back. The plateau was the moment that decided their future. Your identity is shaped by what you do in the plateau. If you leave, your old self wins. If you stay, your new self emerges. You must understand something deeply. Breakthroughs do not happen while you are accelerating. They happen after you endure the plateau. That is why the plateau feels endless. That is why the plateau feels discouraging. That is why the plateau feels like a betrayal of your effort. But it is not betrayal. It is refinement. The plateau is preparing you for the next level. If you skip it, the next level collapses. If you endure it, The next level becomes easier than you imagined. The plateau is the slow, silent shaping of your mind. It's where discipline becomes normalized. It's where your threshold for discomfort increases. It's where your emotional resilience strengthens. It's where you detach from the illusion of instant gratification. It's where you begin to trust yourself, not for results, but for consistency. And when the plateau finally breaks, and it always breaks, you step into momentum that feels unstoppable. Suddenly, the growth accelerates again. Suddenly, the results appear. Suddenly, everything that felt stuck opens up. And in that moment, you realize the plateau wasn't your prison. It was your preparation. You have faced plateaus before. You've misunderstood them. You've surrendered to them. You've mistaken silence for failure. But now you recognize the truth. The plateau is the test of identity. And this time, you will not retreat. You will not slow down. You will not look for shortcuts. You will not restart endlessly. You will stay. You will endure. You will become the version of yourself that survives the silence and rises into the breakthrough that was waiting behind it. Chapter 6. Momentum Loss: How Small Pauses Become Permanent Quits. There is a pattern that destroys more dreams than failure ever has. It's not lack of talent. It's not lack of motivation. It's not even lack of discipline. It's something far quieter and far more dangerous. The small pause. The little break you give yourself. The moment you say, "I'll skip today." The moment you think, "I'll continue tomorrow." The moment you convince yourself that one missed day won't matter. And because it feels harmless, you don't notice what's slipping away. But the truth is brutal. The small pause is the beginning of the collapse. Every major goal you've abandoned didn't start with a dramatic quit. It started with a pause that felt innocent, a pause that felt temporary, a pause that felt like you were still in control. But that pause didn't stay small. It grew, it multiplied, it turned into hesitation, then inconsistency, then disengagement, and finally, quitting. This chapter is about exposing the mechanics of that collapse, because once you understand how small pauses transform into permanent quits, you will finally see the danger in every moment your mind tries to negotiate with your commitment. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. When you have momentum, tasks feel easier, decisions feel simpler, effort requires less energy, discipline feels natural. You don't have to push yourself as hard. You move without friction. This is why the first few days of a consistent routine often feel surprisingly smooth. Your momentum carries you, but momentum is fragile. It takes days to build and minutes to lose, and once you lose it, rebuilding it feels 10 times harder. This is why restarting always feels more exhausting than beginning. Because when you begin, you're excited, but when you restart, you're ashamed. When you begin, you have hope. When you restart, you have history. When you begin, the path is new. When you restart, the path is heavy. A pause turns the lightness of beginning into the burden of restarting. You've felt this before. You start something strong. You stay consistent. You feel proud of yourself. Then one day, just one, you miss the routine. Maybe you were tired. Maybe you were stressed. Maybe something unexpected happened, and you think, it's fine, it's just one day. And technically it is. One day means nothing. One day won't destroy your progress. But what one day does destroy is your identity. The identity you were building, the one that said, "I am consistent," cracks a little. The trust you were forming with yourself weakens. The proof you had been giving your brain that you are committed disappears. And in that small crack, doubt enters, not loudly, quietly, in the form of new thoughts. I can miss one more day. I'll restart properly tomorrow. I just need a break. I'm not feeling it today. I'll get back on track when things calm down. These thoughts seem innocent, but they are signals that your mind is slipping back into your old identity. And your old identity is powerful. It has years of repetition behind it. It has comfort. It has familiarity. It has emotional attachment. So the moment you give it a single opening, it pulls you back with incredible force. What you call a pause is actually a reactivation of your old self. This is why the second missed day feels easier, the third missed day feels normal, and the fourth missed day doesn't even feel like a miss. It feels like your routine never existed. By the time you look back, the consistency you were proud of has evaporated, and you tell yourself you'll restart. You always tell yourself you'll restart, but every restart becomes harder. The distance between you and your momentum widens, and eventually, the goal you were chasing slips into the category of, I tried, but it wasn't for me. But it was for you, you just lost momentum. Let's break down the psychology behind this. Your brain relies on identity loops. These loops are patterns of behavior that confirm who you believe you are. Every time you show up for yourself, you strengthen the identity of someone disciplined. Every time you skip, you strengthen the identity of someone inconsistent. These loops create emotional inertia. Momentum is not just physical, it is psychological. It is identity-based. This means every time you choose action, you reinforce your future self. Every time you choose a pause, you reinforce your past self. Momentum is not just about doing the task, it's about proving to yourself that you are the kind of person who does the task. When you pause, you stop giving your brain that proof. Your identity freezes, and the moment identity freezes, discipline begins to decay. Small pauses also trigger something even more dangerous: the reward loop of relief. When you skip a hard task, you feel relief. That relief is a chemical reward. Your brain releases dopamine when discomfort stops. That means skipping becomes pleasurable. And once your brain learns that skipping brings pleasure, it will start craving it. This is how a pause becomes habit. This is how a break becomes a pattern. This is how momentum dies. Most people think lack of motivation kills their progress. It doesn't. What kills progress is the comfort of stopping. The first pause opens the door. The second pause keeps the door open. The third pause invites your old behavior back into the room. And by the time you realize what's happened, you're sitting in the same place you swore you'd never return to. But here's the truth that can save you. Momentum loss is predictable and preventable. Momentum is lost in moments of negotiation, when your mind says, you deserve rest, when it hasn't earned it, when your body says, do it later, when later will never come, when your emotions say, I'm not in the mood, when the mood never mattered. Momentum is protected by one principle: no 0 days. The goal isn't perfection, the goal is continuity. You don't have to do everything every day, you just have to do something every day. Something small, something simple, something that keeps the identity alive, keeps the habit alive, and keeps the momentum alive. Because once momentum stays alive, breakthroughs become inevitable. You don't need massive effort to create results. You need consistent effort that never collapses into long pauses. You need tiny actions that keep the chain unbroken. You need to understand that quitting never arrives suddenly. It arrives through the small pauses you never questioned. And now that you see the pattern clearly, you can stop it. You can catch the negotiation the moment it begins. You can override the thoughts that try to take you backward. You can protect your identity with insistence instead of excuses. You can maintain your momentum even when your motivation disappears. You can become someone who does not collapse in the small moments that shape the future. Because once you learn to prevent the pause, you eliminate the quit. Chapter 7. The fear of success hidden inside your mind. Most people believe they are held back by fear of failure. They think the reason they quit, hesitate, or stop pushing is because they're scared of losing. But the deeper truth The truth few people ever confront is that it's not failure they fear most. It's success. It's becoming someone stronger, more disciplined, more capable, more powerful than they've ever been. It's the responsibility that comes with the next level. It's the weight of potential. It's the pressure of becoming someone their old identity can no longer recognize. This chapter is about the fear of success. The fear that lives quietly inside your decisions. The fear that whispers excuses. The fear that makes you stop right before the breakthrough. Not because you doubt the result, but because you doubt your ability to handle what the result will demand from you. Let's begin with a difficult truth. Success is unfamiliar, and the brain fears anything unfamiliar. Success requires evolution. It requires new habits, new thinking, new decisions, new levels of responsibility. It requires you to outgrow old beliefs, old routines, old patterns, and sometimes even old relationships. This means that achieving success is not just about gaining something, it's about losing something too. And the human mind has a stronger instinct to avoid loss than to pursue gain. So when you're getting close to a breakthrough, your brain doesn't just feel excitement. It feels danger. Not danger of failing, but danger of changing. Because change threatens your identity, and identity fights to protect itself. Think about it. If you truly transformed into the version of yourself you want to be, disciplined, focused, consistent, strong, your entire life would shift. The way you work, the way you speak, the way you think, the way you handle emotions, the people you surround yourself with, the standards you hold, the choices you make, the things you accept, the things you reject. Success demands a version of you that your current identity has never met before. And that unfamiliarity triggers fear. Your mind begins generating subtle resistance. What if I can't handle that level of responsibility? What if I lose everything once I achieve it? What if success changes me too much? What if people around me start expecting more from me? What if I become someone I don't recognize? What if I reach the top and fail there instead? These fears don't stop you at the beginning. They don't appear when you're planning, when you're dreaming, when you're imagining the future. They appear only when progress becomes real, when you're close, when you're almost there, when the possibility of success is no longer fantasy but reality. This is why you quit right before the breakthrough. Your brain believes stopping protects you. It protects you from change. It protects you from pressure. It protects you from expectation. It protects you from stepping into a new identity. The closer you get to the next level, the louder this protection mechanism becomes. You feel it as procrastination. You feel it as overthinking. You feel it as hesitation. You feel it as self-sabotage. You feel it as, I'll do it tomorrow. You feel it as losing interest in something you cared deeply about just a week ago. But none of these signs are random. They are psychological defenses. They are your mind's attempt to keep you in the life it knows how to handle. Your fear of success shows up in many disguises. You slow down when you start getting good at something. You disconnect when your consistency starts building results. You get overwhelmed when new opportunities open up. You retreat when people start noticing your growth. You pull back when you realize your life could actually change. You don't stop because you can't. You stop because your brain gets scared of the version of you that doesn't stop. Success means stepping into power, and power demands responsibility. Once you succeed, people see you differently. They expect more from you. You expect more from yourself. Your standards rise. Your identity expands. Your comfort zone dissolves. Your old excuses stop working. That is terrifying to the part of you that feels safe being average. But here's the most important truth. The fear of success is not actually fear of success itself. It is fear of three things: identity death, responsibility, and exposure. Identity death means the version of you you've always known will no longer exist. Even if that version was holding you back, it was familiar, and the brain clings to familiarity. Responsibility means that once you achieve something, you must maintain it. You must carry the weight of it. You must show up for it. Success removes the excuses that shield you. Exposure means, once you're at a higher level, your flaws become visible. Your weaknesses show up. You can no longer hide behind the comfort of staying small. This is why the mind panics when you get close to a breakthrough. It senses that your old identity is dying. It senses that you are stepping into unfamiliar territory. It senses that you are about to level up in a way you cannot undo. And in that moment, your mind tries to pull you back. Not to harm you, but to protect you from transformation. But transformation is exactly what you need. You cannot become who you want to be without losing who you used to be. And instead of fearing that loss, you must understand it as evolution. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding the layers that no longer serve you. You are not stepping into danger. You are stepping into growth. You are not entering unfamiliar territory. You are entering the territory you were always meant to reach. Here is the truth you must embrace. Success will change you. Success will demand more from you. Success will push you. Success will challenge you. Success will expose you. And success will require you to outgrow parts of your life. But none of that is a reason to fear it. It is a reason to pursue it. The fear of success does not mean you're unworthy of success. It means you're on the edge of your breakthrough. It means your brain has recognized how close you are. It means your identity is shifting. It means something inside you is awakening. So the next time you feel the urge to retreat, slow down, or sabotage your progress, remind yourself of this. You are not scared of failing. You are scared of becoming powerful. And power is exactly what you were meant to step into. Chapter 8. Emotional exhaustion and the final stretch. There is a unique type of exhaustion that appears only in the final stretch of your journey. It's not the tiredness you feel at the beginning, when everything is new. It's not the fatigue you feel in the middle, when you're still building strength. It's a deeper, heavier exhaustion that settles into your mind and body the closer you get to your breakthrough. It makes you feel drained, unfocused, overwhelmed, and disconnected from your purpose. It makes you question whether continuing is worth it. It makes you think about stopping, not because you can't continue, but because you're emotionally depleted. This exhaustion is the final test. It arrives not when you're far from your goal, but when you're dangerously close to it. This is the exhaustion created by emotional resistance, identity friction, and prolonged effort without visible reward. It's the exhaustion that pushes even the strongest people to give up early. It's the exhaustion that convinces you the journey isn't meant for you. It's the exhaustion that makes the last steps feel impossible, even though they are the steps that matter most. Understanding this exhaustion is the key to surviving the breakthrough stage. Think about this. Your emotional energy is not infinite. Every action you take, every discipline choice, every habit you maintain, every temptation you reject, drains emotional resources. In the beginning, you refill that energy easily. Motivation keeps you going. Progress fuels you. Hope gives you strength. But over time, that emotional supply gets stretched. You're no longer running on excitement. You're running on discipline. You're running on resilience. You're running on internal drive. That shift alone is exhausting. But the deeper exhaustion comes from something else. The internal conflict between who you are and who you are becoming. Your old identity is still alive. It's still fighting for control. It's still resisting the changes you're making. Every time you push forward, it pulls back. Every time you grow, it panics. Every time you commit, it tries to negotiate. This constant tug of war between the old you and the new you drains more energy than any physical task ever could. The closer you get to your breakthrough, the stronger this internal battle becomes. Why? Because your old identity senses that it's losing power. It knows that if you succeed, if you reach your breakthrough, it dies. The habits that once controlled you die. The excuses you once believed die. The weaknesses you once protected die. The version of you that lived in fear dies. And the brain, which is built for survival, fights to defend that old identity, even if that identity was holding you back. This unconscious war inside your mind creates emotional exhaustion. This is why the final stretch feels so heavy. This is why you suddenly lose interest in the goal you've been chasing. This is why you question everything right before the finish line. This is why you feel drained even when you've been consistent. This is why you start imagining different paths, different ideas, different distractions. Your emotional system is overloaded, not from the work itself, but from fighting the resistance that comes with transformation. Let's break this down into the 3 major sources of final stretch exhaustion. 1. Identity drag. Your old self pulls on you like gravity. It wants you to stay the same. It fears growth. When you get close to breaking old patterns, the drag intensifies. This drag feels like tiredness, but it's actually fear disguised as fatigue. DV, emotional overexertion. For weeks or months, you've been pushing yourself, not just physically, but emotionally. Discipline is emotional labor. Consistency is emotional labor. Saying no to old habits is emotional labor. Your emotional muscles get tired just like physical ones. Lack of immediate reward. The final stretch often provides the least visible progress. You've done everything right, yet the results haven't appeared yet. Your brain hates this. It wants reward. It wants reassurance. It wants signals that the effort is working. When it doesn't get those signals, it interprets the silence as failure, creating emotional pain. This emotional exhaustion makes quitting feel justified. You start thinking, I'm worn out. I can't keep doing this. I don't feel the drive anymore. I need a long break. This is too much for me. But these thoughts don't mean you're failing. They mean you're close. Emotional exhaustion is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of proximity. You never get this tired when you're far away from your goals. You get this tired when you're on the edge of them. You feel this heavy when your breakthrough is within reach. That exhaustion is the smoke that rises when your identity is burning away its old limitations. It is the friction created by leveling up. What you must understand is this. Emotional exhaustion is temporary. It is not your new state. It is not your reality. It is a final resistance. It is the last push your mind gives to keep you from entering unfamiliar territory. Once you push through this exhaustion, something changes. Your emotional system resets. Your identity shifts. Your discipline becomes natural instead of forced. The resistance fades. The effort feels lighter. And then the results, those results that hid from you for so long, begin to appear. But you will never reach that moment if you misinterpret emotional exhaustion as a sign to quit. Think about every person who has ever achieved something great. Athletes training for championships. Entrepreneurs building something from nothing. Artists mastering their craft. Students pushing through academic challenges. Anyone who has ever reached a breakthrough has faced emotional collapse. They faced days where their mind screamed at them to stop. They faced mornings where they couldn't find the strength. They faced moments where quitting felt like the easiest and most reasonable choice. But they didn't stop. Not because they were stronger, not because they were more talented, but because they understood the nature of the final stretch. They knew exhaustion meant they were close. This is how you push through emotional exhaustion. You don't wait for motivation. You don't wait to feel energized again. You don't negotiate with your feelings. You don't follow the emotional noise in your head. You commit to one thing, showing up in the smallest way possible. Because surviving the final stretch is not about intensity, it's about continuity. It's about maintaining your identity long enough for the resistance to break. It's about outlasting the psychological war happening inside you. If you are tired, you rest small, not long. If you are overwhelmed, you simplify, not abandon. If you are drained, you reduce effort, not eliminate effort. The final stretch doesn't require perfection, it requires persistence. And once you persist through the exhaustion, your breakthrough becomes unavoidable. Not because it magically appears, but because persistence reshapes your identity into someone who can receive it. Chapter 9. Training yourself to push past the breaking point. Every meaningful transformation in your life has a single defining moment. It's not the day you decided to start. It's not the day you felt motivated. It's not even the day you made your first progress. The defining moment of every breakthrough is the one where you feel like you cannot continue, yet you do. This moment is what separates those who live their entire lives repeating the same cycles from those who rise above them. This moment is what separates temporary effort from permanent identity. This moment is what reveals who you truly are beneath your excuses, emotions, and limitations. Pushing past the breaking point is not about violence, aggression, or force. It's about understanding your mind at its most vulnerable state. It's about seeing the difference between real limits and emotional limits. It's about training yourself to keep moving when your old identity is trying to drag you backward. And most importantly, it's about mastering the psychological threshold that stops most people from ever reaching the life they want. To push past the breaking point, you must first understand what the breaking point actually is. The breaking point is not a physical moment. It's not the point of absolute exhaustion. It's not the moment when your body truly cannot continue. The breaking point is almost always mental. It is the moment your mind begins to rebel against your growth. It is the moment it unleashes every fear, every doubt, every insecurity, and every excuse in an attempt to stop you. The breaking point is the final defense mechanism of your old identity. The mind uses predictable strategies to break you before you break through. Peer-mace, emotional amplification. Your mind exaggerates your discomfort. It takes the smallest struggle and magnifies it. What was a manageable challenge suddenly feels unbearable. Your emotions inflate the difficulty, not to harm you, but to push you back into familiar patterns. 2. Cognitive distortion. At the breaking point, your thoughts become distorted. You start believing lies that feel like truth. This isn't working. I'm not built for this. I can't take any more. These are distortions created by stress, not insight. Try identity pull. Your old identity pulls on you like gravity. When you get close to becoming someone new, your old patterns fight to stay alive. This pull feels like overwhelming resistance. It feels like exhaustion, but it's actually psychological friction. 4. Desire for relief. At the breaking point, quitting feels like relief. It feels like release. It feels like peace. Your brain interprets stopping as safety, so it rewards the thought of quitting with a soothing emotional response. That relief is the trap that keeps you from your breakthrough. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step. The second step is training yourself to override them. Let's explore how that training works. You push past the breaking point not by demanding more from yourself, but by changing the way you interpret the signals from your mind. Instead of taking them as warnings, you learn to see them as milestones. Instead of panicking, you learn to observe. Instead of stopping, you learn to continue at a pace that keeps you moving forward without collapsing. This mental shift is what builds resilience. Resilience is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to continue through struggle without mistrusting yourself. When you push past the breaking point, you strengthen the part of your identity that believes you can endure. You reinforce the idea that you are capable of more than your mind is comfortable with. And once your identity begins to shift, your capacity for effort expands. One of the most powerful truths you must embrace is this: your breaking point is not fixed, it moves. Every time you push through it, it rises. This means you are not stuck with the same limits forever. You can expand them, you can stretch them, you can transform them, and every time you do, you become someone harder to break. Let's look at how the breaking point shows up in different areas of life. When you're working out, the breaking point appears as the moment your muscles burn and your mind screams to stop. But physically, you could still do one more rep. When you're studying or learning, the breaking point appears when your brain feels overloaded and you want to close the book. But mentally, you could still focus for 5 more minutes. When you're building a habit, the breaking point appears when consistency starts feeling heavy, but realistically, the task is still completely doable. When you're building a business or a creative project, the breaking point appears when results slow and self-doubt rises. But logically, the next step is still well within your ability. In every case, the breaking point is not the end of your capacity, it is the end of your comfort. And that difference is everything. This means pushing past the breaking point is not about doing something extreme. It is about refusing to treat discomfort as a command. It is about learning to interpret the signals of discomfort as signs of growth in you. Here's how you train for that. 1. Shrink the task, not the commitment. When you hit the breaking point, don't stop. Reduce the intensity. Lower the demand. Make the task smaller, but keep it alive. This keeps your identity intact. 2. Focus on the next step only. The breaking point grows when you think ahead. Instead of imagining how much more you have to do, direct your mind to the next minute, the next rep, the next paragraph, the next action. 3. Observe your thoughts without obeying them. Treat your thoughts like passing weather. Acknowledge them, but don't react. This breaks the emotional attachment that normally pulls you into quitting. 4. Accept imperfect effort. Perfection collapses at the breaking point, but imperfect effort still moves you forward. Give yourself permission to continue badly as long as you continue. 5. Recognize the moment. When you feel the urge to stop, name it. Tell yourself, this is the breaking point. Awareness removes its power. 6. Make the breaking point your cue to continue. This is the ultimate psychological shift. When most people stop, you train yourself to move. Not aggressively, intentionally. The breaking point becomes a turning point. Over time, these practices rewire your brain. The moment that once triggered quitting becomes the moment that triggers resilience. The discomfort that once scared you becomes familiar. The thoughts that once controlled you lose their influence. And the emotional chaos that once overwhelmed you becomes manageable. When you train yourself to push past the breaking point, you stop being someone who collapses at the edge. You become someone who steps through it. You become someone who understands that the point where everything inside you resists is the point where your transformation begins. This ability is the foundation of unstoppable people. It separates those who talk about change from those who achieve it. It separates those who dream from those who act. It separates those who quit from those who break through. Your breakthrough will not arrive because everything became easier. It will arrive because you became someone who keeps going when everything becomes harder. It will arrive when you push past the mental barrier that has stopped you for years. It will arrive when you recognize that the breaking point is not the end, but the entrance. And once you step through that entrance, your entire identity changes. Chapter 10. The discipline of showing up when you don't see results. There is a specific kind of discipline that separates people who succeed long-term from those who quit early. It's not the discipline of intensity. It's not the discipline of working hard when you're excited. It's not the discipline of motivation or inspiration or adrenaline. The discipline that truly matters is the discipline of showing up when you don't see results, when nothing is changing, when your effort feels invisible, when the outcome you want doesn't match the effort you're giving. This is the discipline that most people never master, and because they never master it, they live their lives repeating the same cycles: beginning, trying, slowing, quitting, restarting, and never reaching the breakthrough that would have changed everything. To understand this discipline, you must understand why your mind reacts so strongly when results disappear. Your brain has been conditioned by modern life to expect instant payoff. You're surrounded by quick rewards, instant information, instant entertainment, instant gratification. Your brain becomes addicted to immediacy. So when you start working towards something long-term, something that requires patience, consistency, and delayed reward, your brain struggles. It wants a signal that your effort is working. It wants proof. It wants feedback. When it doesn't get that feedback, it panics. The panic shows up in predictable ways. You lose interest. You feel bored. You doubt yourself. You question your progress. You wonder if the goal is right for you. You think about changing the plan. You look for something easier. None of this happens because the goal is wrong. It happens because the results are silent, and silence is uncomfortable. When you don't see visible progress, your brain assumes the effort is wasted. It assumes you're stuck. It assumes something is broken. But this assumption is not logical. It's emotional. It's the emotional response of a brain trained to expect quick gratification. Breaking this reaction is one of the most powerful transformations you will ever make. Showing up without visible results is the ultimate form of self-trust. It's the moment where you commit to becoming someone you haven't seen yet. It's the moment where you continue walking even when the path looks still. It's the moment where discipline replaces motivation. And that shift from motivation to discipline is what creates breakthroughs. Let's break down why results disappear and why this disappearance is essential. Early progress is a psychological illusion. In the beginning of any journey, changes happen quickly because you're starting from zero. The body responds rapidly, the mind engages quickly, skills improve sharply. But after the early phase, deeper growth begins. Deeper growth is structural, it is slow, it is quiet, it is hidden. It does not look impressive from the outside. This quiet work is the foundation. Think of a building. The foundation takes the longest to build and looks like nothing. No walls, no floors, no structure, just digging, reinforcing, stabilizing. If someone walked by, they might think no progress was happening. But the deeper the foundation, the stronger the building. Your growth is the same. When results disappear, it means the foundation phase has begun. It means you've moved beyond surface-level progress. It means you've entered the part of the journey that builds identity, not just outcome. This phase demands a different version of you. In this phase, showing up is no longer about motivation. It's about identity. It's about who you choose to be when nobody is watching, when nothing seems to change, when effort feels thankless. This is the phase where people quit, not because they're incapable, but because they cannot tolerate silence. But silence is where breakthroughs grow. Consider someone learning a new skill. At first, improvement is rapid. Then suddenly they feel stuck. They think they've plateaued. But the brain is actually reorganizing information, strengthening neural connections, refining motor skills, stabilizing knowledge. This internal restructuring feels like stagnation, but is actually preparation for the next leap. Consider someone building a habit. The early days feel empowering, then the routine becomes dull. Progress becomes invisible. The brain fights consistency. This isn't failure, it's habit consolidation, a moment where the brain turns conscious effort into automatic behavior. Consider someone building a business. The initial energy is high, then growth slows, engagement dips, progress feels uncertain. But this is the phase where systems are being built, where identity is shifting from amateur to professional, where long-term foundations are laid. In every example, the silence is not the absence of progress. It is the building of deeper progress. And only those who keep showing up during the silence ever experience what comes after it. Now, let's talk about how to develop this discipline. 1. Separate action from outcome. Outcome-based discipline collapses when results slow. Identity-based discipline continues regardless of results. Instead of asking, "Is this working?" ask, "Who am I choosing to be today?" 2. Create non-negotiable minimums. A minimum standard of effort protects your identity. Even if you show up at 20%, you show up. The chain stays unbroken. The identity stays intact. 3. Detach from the need for immediate feedback. Your mind will beg for proof. Train yourself to continue without it. This is how self-trust is built. 4. Show up especially on days that feel pointless. These are the days that matter most. These are the days that shape the future. These are the days that strengthen identity. 5. Measure consistency instead of results. Consistency is the true predictor of breakthroughs. Results appear when consistency becomes effortless. 6. See silence as a signal of progress, not failure. When results go quiet, it means your breakthrough is near. It means the foundation is settling. It means you're entering the phase most people never reach. Mastering the discipline of showing up without results will make you unstoppable. It removes the emotional chains that keep you tied to the beginning phases of everything you try. It detaches your identity from external validation. It gives you the ability to push through the moments that have stopped you for years. And that ability, the ability to keep going when nothing seems to be happening, is the exact ability required to reach the breakthrough that has always been waiting for you. This discipline is not glamorous. It is not pretty. It is not exciting. But it is powerful. It's what turns average people into consistent people, and consistent people into extraordinary people. If you can master this, you no longer quit early. You no longer collapse at the edge. You no longer wait for motivation. You no longer depend on emotional highs. You become the kind of person who finishes. You become the kind of person who breaks through. You become the kind of person who transforms their life, quietly, steadily, relentlessly. Chapter 11. When your mind lies, the signals that come right before growth. Your mind has a way of speaking loudest at the exact moment you need it to be quiet. It becomes the most dramatic, the most convincing, the most emotional when you are standing at the edge of real growth. It tells you stories that feel like truth, even though they're designed to protect your comfort, not your potential. The closer you get to a breakthrough, the more aggressively your mind lies to you. Not because it wants you to fail, but because it wants you to stay the same. This chapter is about those lies, the signals your mind sends right before growth, the thoughts that sound like wisdom but are actually fear, the emotional reactions that feel like intuition but are actually resistance. Understanding these signals can save you from sabotaging yourself again, because your breakthrough doesn't just require discipline, it requires the ability to recognize when your own mind is working against you. Let's begin with the most deceptive truth of all. Your mind is built to keep you alive, not to help you grow. Your mind isn't optimized for long-term goals, self-improvement, or becoming the best version of yourself. It's optimized for survival. Survival means safety, familiarity, and predictability. Growth requires discomfort, uncertainty, and change. So when you begin doing things that challenge your identity, your mind panics. It interprets the unfamiliar as a threat. It interprets effort as danger. It interprets discomfort as a warning. And because it wants to protect you, it tries to convince you to stop. These protective mechanisms show up in predictable signals. Signals you must learn to interpret correctly. Signal 1. This isn't working. This thought appears the moment results slow down. It appears even when you're making progress. It appears not because the path is wrong, but because the brain hates delayed reward. It wants quick evidence that your effort matters. When it doesn't get that evidence, it tells you the effort is pointless. But this moment, the moment you feel like nothing is working, is always the moment right before hidden progress becomes visible. Signal 2. I'm too tired for this. Your mind exaggerates fatigue. Emotional resistance often masquerades as physical exhaustion. The truth is, the body can continue long after the mind wants to stop. But because stopping brings immediate relief, the brain encourages it. Recognize this. If you were genuinely at your limit, you wouldn't be debating whether to continue. You would already be collapsed. Signal 3. Maybe this goal isn't right for me. This thought always shows up right before consistency becomes identity. Your brain knows that once something becomes part of who you are, it loses control over you. So it tries to convince you the entire path is wrong, even when you know deep down it's right. Signal 4. I should try something new. This is the disguise your mind uses to hide fear as logic. New things feel exciting. They feel easier because you haven't failed at them yet. Your mind uses novelty as a distraction to pull you away from the slow, steady work that leads to breakthroughs. But switching paths repeatedly ensures you never finish anything. Signal 5. I don't feel motivated anymore. Your mind uses the absence of motivation as proof that it's time to stop, even though the entire purpose of discipline is to continue without motivation. Losing motivation is not a sign to quit. It's a sign to rely on structure. Motivation disappearing is normal. Believing motivation must stay forever is the lie. Signal 6. I need results before I keep going. This thought is the biggest trap of them all. It makes your effort conditional. It turns your commitment into a negotiation. But breakthroughs require unconditional effort that continues even when the results are invisible. This lie is your mind's attempt to regain control by making your commitment fragile. Signal 7. I'm not improving. You do not feel internal progress while it's happening. You only notice it in hindsight. Your brain is terrible at detecting microgrowth. So when you can't feel a difference, it assumes there is no difference. This feeling is not a sign of stagnation. It's a sign that progress is happening beneath the surface. Signal 8. Other people are way ahead of me. Comparison is one of the brain's survival tools. It's meant to help you fit into social groups, but during growth, comparison becomes poison. It makes you believe you're behind when you're simply on a different timeline. It pushes you toward quitting something that could have changed your entire life. These signals are not random. They appear at the same point in every journey, the transition stage, the stage where your old identity begins losing its grip and your new identity begins forming. This stage is uncomfortable, it's confusing, it's mentally draining. And because the mind hates uncertainty, it responds with lies. Not malicious lies, protective lies. Your mind is trying to protect you from discomfort by convincing you to stop doing the very thing that will change your life. That is the irony of psychological growth. The mind protects your comfort even when your comfort is killing your progress. To break this cycle, you need to understand something important. Your mind is loudest right before the breakthrough because it knows the breakthrough will change you. It knows the breakthrough will weaken your old habits. It knows the breakthrough will make your excuses useless. It knows the breakthrough will expose your potential. It knows the breakthrough will prove you can do more than you believed. And that is terrifying to the part of your identity that clings to familiarity. So the mind lies. It lies to keep you small. It lies to keep you safe. It lies to keep you predictable. But once you learn to recognize the lies, they lose their power. They become background noise instead of roadblocks. Here's how you train yourself to see through the lies. Fear may, expect the lies. When the thoughts show up, don't panic. Don't analyze. Recognize them as familiar signals. 2. Label the lies. Tell yourself, this is my mind protecting me, not guiding me. Naming it separates you from it. Respond with action, not negotiation. Your mind wins through delay. You win through movement, even small movement. 4. Reconnect to your identity, not the emotion. Emotions change. Identity endures. Remind yourself who you're becoming. Woo. Remain consistent through discomfort. The mind adjusts to whatever pattern you reinforce. Show it that discomfort doesn't control you. Once you master this, something remarkable happens. Your mind becomes quieter. Not because life gets easier, but because your brain realizes that resistance no longer stops you. When your actions remain stable through emotional turbulence, your mind stops wasting energy trying to protect the old version of you. And then the growth you've been chasing, quiet, invisible, internal, finally breaks through into your reality. Chapter 12. The environment that makes you quit early. Most people think discipline is purely internal. They believe success depends only on mindset, motivation, and willpower. But there's a hidden truth that determines far more than people realize. Your environment shapes your behavior more than your intentions do. In fact, your environment silently controls your consistency, your effort, your energy, your focus, and your discipline. It dictates whether you stay committed or quit early. It dictates whether your breakthrough becomes possible or stays out of reach. You don't quit because you're weak. You quit because your environment makes quitting easy. You quit because your surroundings reinforce your old identity. You quit because everything around you is designed to pull you back into comfort. If you want to stop quitting right before the breakthrough, you must understand how your environment influences you. Not in an obvious way, in subtle ways that you barely notice but constantly respond to. Let's break down the invisible factors that shape your behavior. Your environment sends signals to your brain. Every object, sound, person, and digital influence tells your mind what to do. Some environments say, focus. Others say, relax. Some say, discipline. Others say, distraction. Without realizing it, you obey the signals around you because your brain always chooses the path of least resistance. When your environment is built for comfort, consistency becomes impossible. You lose discipline not because you lack ability, but because you live in an environment that rewards the old version of you and punishes the new one. Here are the 4 environmental traps that cause premature quitting. 1. Overstimulating environments. Your mind cannot focus when it's overloaded. Background noise, clutter, notifications, people interrupting, constant distractions, they drain your cognitive energy. When your environment is chaotic, your effort becomes heavier. Everything feels harder. And when effort feels harder, quitting feels easier. If you want to break through, you must create a physical space that reduces stimulation, not increases it. 2. Comfort-centered environments. Your environment may be designed for comfort, not growth. Soft lighting, cozy furniture, easy access to entertainment, snacks within reach. None of these are bad, but they make your goals harder. When comfort is the default option, discipline becomes an uphill battle. Your brain will always choose the environment that feels easier. A breakthrough requires environments that support your future self, not your past self. 3. Social environments that reinforce old patterns. You become who you spend time with. People around you shape your emotional energy, your habits, your beliefs, and your expectations for yourself. If you spend time around people who avoid challenges, quit easily, complain often, reject discipline, fear growth, or stay in comfort zones, you will absorb their patterns without realizing it. Your breakthrough will never happen in an environment that centers mediocrity. You need environments that normalize effort, ambition, consistency, and growth. 4. Digital environments that drain your focus. Your phone is part of your environment. Every app you use, every notification, every social platform, every feed you scroll, it all shapes your mental state. Digital environments are designed to steal your attention. They overwhelm your brain with novelty, dopamine, and distraction. And distracted minds quit early. If you don't control your digital environment, it will control your discipline. Now that you understand these traps, let's explore how they affect the moment you quit. Quitting rarely happens because of one big reason. Quitting happens because your environment constantly nudges you towards stopping. It makes quitting the comfortable option. It makes continuing the difficult one. And when you're tired, stressed, or emotionally overwhelmed, which always happens right before a breakthrough, your brain chooses the environment that feels safest. You must redesign your environment so continuing becomes easier than quitting. This requires practical changes, small adjustments that shift your behavior massively. Let's break down the most powerful ones. 1. Create a dedicated space for growth, even if it's small, even if it's a corner of a room. This space becomes a psychological trigger. The more you use it for focus and consistency, the stronger the association becomes. Your brain learns, when I'm here, I perform. 2. Remove friction for good habits. Make the behaviors that support your breakthrough easy. Lay out your tools. Prepare your materials. Set the stage the night before. Reduce steps. Reduce decisions. Reduce friction. 3. Add friction to bad habits. Bad habits don't disappear because you want them to. They disappear because they become harder to engage in. Delete apps, block websites, put your phone across the room, hide distractions, make quitting inconvenient. 4. Surround yourself with people who reinforce growth. You don't need perfect people. You need people with direction, people who challenge themselves, people who show effort, people who normalize discipline. Their energy shapes your identity. 5. Use digital minimalism. Control your digital environment with intention. Remove noise. Reduce inputs. Create boundaries. Protect your attention like it's a valuable resource, because it is. 6. Declutter your physical space. Clutter drains mental clarity. A clean environment increases focus, reduces stress, and strengthens discipline. Your surroundings shape your mind. 7. Ritualize your environment. Add cues that activate discipline. A certain light, a specific notebook, a particular desk, a daily setup routine. Rituals anchor your identity to the environment. When you redesign your environment, quitting becomes harder, not because you force yourself, but because your environment no longer supports the old version of you. And that is the key. Your environment must match who you want to become, not who you used to be. Most people fail because their external world does not match their internal goals. They want a breakthrough while living in an environment built for comfort. They want consistency while living in a space designed for distraction. They want discipline while surrounding themselves with cues that encourage quitting. Your environment is not neutral. It is either building your breakthrough or blocking it. When you recognize this, everything changes. You stop fighting yourself. You stop relying on motivation. You stop collapsing at the edge. Because now your environment supports your identity. It reinforces your discipline. It reduces resistance. It carries you through the moments your mind wants to stop. A breakthrough is not just an internal transformation. It is an environmental transformation. And once your environment aligns with your goals, quitting will no longer feel like the natural option. Chapter 13. How to stay committed when no one believes in you. There will come a moment in your journey, a moment that arrives quietly, often without warning, when you realize that no one else can see what you see. No one feels the pull you feel. No one understands the vision you're chasing. No one believes in the direction you're moving. You'll notice that people around you begin to doubt your path, question your choices, or subtly discourage your ambition. Not because they want to harm you, but because they can't imagine the version of you that you're trying to become. This is one of the most difficult tests you will ever face, because when people don't believe in you, you start losing belief in yourself. And if you don't know how to handle this phase, you will quit. Not because you're weak, but because humans are wired for social validation. Your brain is built to stay within the tribe, to stay accepted, to mirror the expectations of the people around you. When your environment questions your growth, your brain interprets that as a threat. This is why so many people give up early. Not because the goal was too big, not because the path was too difficult, but because they couldn't carry their journey alone. To stay committed when no one believes in you, you must understand one truth. Breakthroughs are lonely by design. The path to transformation is not crowded, it is quiet, it is personal, it is internal. You are walking away from the identity that everyone around you is familiar with. When you do that, people will react. Not because your growth is wrong, but because your growth disturbs their comfort. Your growth forces them to confront their own limitations. Your ambition forces them to see what they've avoided. Your discipline exposes their excuses. Your progress threatens their complacency. And people rarely support the thing that disturbs their comfort. This doesn't make them bad. It makes them human. Let's break down the 3 types of disbelief you will encounter. 1. The disbelief of familiarity. People who know you well often struggle to see you differently. They know your past, they've seen your failures, they remember your mistakes. They are attached to the old version of you, so when you try to break out of that version, they doubt it, not because you can't change, but because they can't update their mental picture of you. 2. The disbelief of projection. Some people project their own fears onto you. They doubt themselves, so they doubt you. They quit early, so they expect you to quit. They can't imagine themselves succeeding, so they assume you won't. When you chase growth, it makes them uncomfortable. It highlights their stagnation. Instead of facing it, they dismiss your effort. 3. The disbelief of protection. Not all disbelief is negative. Some people discourage you because they are afraid you'll get hurt. They want to protect you from disappointment. They want to keep you safe. But safety and growth rarely coexist. If you follow their fear-based guidance, you will live a small life, not a fulfilled one. Understanding why people doubt you allows you to carry their disbelief without absorbing it. But how do you stay committed when the world around you expects you to fall back into old patterns? How do you keep going when no one claps for you, no one praises your consistency, and no one understands why you're pushing so hard? You build internal validation. You build self-generated confidence. You build a relationship with yourself that is stronger than the opinions around you. This is not about arrogance, it is about independence. You must learn to see yourself clearly even when no one else does. That is the foundation of every breakthrough. Here are the mindset shifts that make this possible. 1. Understand that belief comes after proof. People won't believe you at the beginning. They will believe you after the results show. Humans trust outcomes, not intentions. Your job is not to convince them now. It's to stay consistent long enough that the results convince them later. 2. Stop explaining yourself. You don't owe anyone a presentation about your dreams. Your growth doesn't need approval. The moment you stop explaining, you stop inviting doubt into your mind. Silence is a form of power. 3. Accept that you will outgrow people. Not everyone will walk with you to your next level. Some people will stay where they are. Some will fall away. Some will resist your growth. This is normal. Growth is not always compatible with every relationship you have. 4. Build a small circle of growth-minded people. You don't need many. You need a few. People who understand hard work, consistency, and ambition. When your inner circle normalizes growth, your environment no longer weakens you. 5. Normalize not being understood. Being misunderstood is not a sign that you're wrong. It's a sign that you're early. Vision always looks unrealistic until the results make it obvious. 6. Anchor yourself in your why. When belief fades, yours or others, your why becomes the rope you hold onto. Your why turns confusion into direction. Your why turns silence into discipline. Most importantly, you must learn to validate yourself through action, not imagination. Confidence is not the belief that you will succeed. Confidence is the evidence that you show up consistently. Each time you continue without applause, you strengthen your self-trust. Each time you move forward without encouragement, you strengthen your independence. Each time you hold your path without validation, you strengthen your identity. And one day, something shifts. Your results begin to show. Your progress becomes visible. Your discipline becomes noticeable. Your effort begins to speak for itself. People who once doubted you will begin to change their tone. Some will admire you. Some will stay silent. Some will pretend they always believed in you. Some will come back and want to be close to you again. But by then, you will have changed. You will no longer need their validation. You will no longer depend on their belief. You will no longer collapse under their doubt, because you will have built something far stronger: belief in yourself. Staying committed when no one believes in you is one of the most challenging parts of your journey, but it is also the phase that builds the version of you capable of reaching the breakthrough. It teaches you to trust yourself so deeply that external noise loses its power. And once you develop that trust, quitting early stops being an option. Because now your commitment is no longer fragile. It is internal. It is rooted. It is yours. Chapter 14. Turning setbacks into fuel for one more step. Setbacks are not the opposite of progress. They are the proof of it. You only experience setbacks when you're moving forward. Standing still creates no resistance. Staying the same creates no obstacles. You face setbacks because you are pushing into unfamiliar territory, challenging old patterns, stretching your capacity, and stepping into a version of yourself that your past cannot follow. But most people misinterpret setbacks. Instead of seeing them as signs of growth, they treat them as signals to stop. This is why setbacks cause so many people to quit right before their breakthrough. When something goes wrong, when you fall behind, miss a day, break a streak, lose momentum, or fail at a step, you feel a familiar punch of disappointment. Not because the setback is big, but because it touches the most sensitive part of your identity: your belief in yourself. Setbacks make you doubt your progress. They make you question your path. They make you feel like the effort you invested has been wasted. But none of that is true. A setback is not a reversal. A setback is a redirect. It's information, it's feedback. It's your journey telling you exactly where you need to grow. To turn setbacks into fuel, you must understand the psychology behind them. When you experience a setback, your mind reacts instinctively. It tries to protect your ego by offering you escape routes. Maybe this goal isn't for me. I knew I would fail again. I ruined everything. So what's the point? I'll restart when I'm ready. I'm too behind now. I lost my streak, so I might as well give up. These thoughts are not truth. They are emotional reflexes. Reflexes that come from years of associating failure with identity. When you were younger, failure was often punished, judged, or ridiculed. So now even small setbacks trigger a deep emotional reaction. This emotional reaction makes you want to stop. Not because the setback is big, but because the emotion is heavy. If you can separate the emotion from the information, you transform the setback into fuel. Let's break down the 3 layers of every setback. Pyramus, the emotional layer. This is the shock, the disappointment, the frustration, the anger. This layer is temporary. It is a wave that passes. But if you act inside this wave, if you quit, if you abandon the path, you make a permanent decision based on a temporary emotion. DV, the meaning layer. This is the interpretation, the story you tell yourself about the setback. This layer determines your future. If you say, "This means I'm not capable," you stop. If you say, "This means I'm learning," you grow. The meaning you assign becomes the direction you take. 3. The instruction layer. This is the truth underneath the setback, the lesson, the adjustment, the pattern you needed to notice. This layer is where breakthroughs begin, because setbacks always reveal something. A habit that needs reinforcing, a system that needs improving, a weakness that needs strengthening. To turn setbacks into fuel, you must move through all 3 layers intentionally. Let's explore how setbacks actually work in your favor. When you break a streak after days, weeks, or months of consistency, it hurts. But that pain is a signal that you care. People who don't care don't feel anything when they fail. The pain you feel means you were invested. That's not a weakness. That's the foundation of your breakthrough. When you lose progress in the gym, in your studies, in your business, or in your habits, your first reaction is disappointment. But disappointment is a sign of potential. It means you know you're capable of more. It means the setback didn't define you. It irritated you because you know the growth is still inside you. When you fall behind, your brain tries to convince you the journey is ruined. But a setback is not the journey. A setback is one moment within the journey, a moment that tests whether your commitment was emotional or intentional. People who quit early assume that consistency means perfection, that if they miss a day, their identity collapses. They misunderstand the nature of long-term success. Breakthroughs are not built on perfect streaks. They are built on persistent restarts. They are built on the willingness to continue even after you stumble. And here is the truth most people never learn. The ability to recover quickly from setbacks is far more important than the ability to avoid them. Setbacks become fuel when you respond to them with forward movement. Here's how you do that. 1. Don't wait to restart. The longer you wait, the heavier the restart becomes. Restart immediately, in the smallest way possible. 1 minute, 1 page, 1 rep, 1 action. Restarting instantly keeps the identity intact. 2. Reduce the shame, not the standards. Shame makes you quit. Standards make you return. When you remove shame from your setbacks, you remove the emotional weight that drags you backwards. 3. Analyze without judgment. Ask, what caused this setback? Not, what's wrong with me? When you analyze behavior instead of identity, you learn instead of collapse. 4. Turn the mistake into a modification. If you missed a day because your routine was too heavy, shrink it. If you failed because your environment was distracting, fix it. If you collapsed under pressure, adjust the load. Setbacks show you exactly where you need to adapt. 5. Celebrate the return, not the fall. Your comeback matters more than your stumble. Build pride around your ability to get back up, not your ability to be perfect. 6. Use the setback to strengthen your identity. Tell yourself, I'm someone who continues, even after mistakes. That sentence alone can break cycles that have controlled you for years. Setbacks become powerful once you realize they are not signs of weakness, they are signs of progress. Every setback means you're attempting something challenging. It means you're moving forward. It means you're learning. It means you're growing. People who never face setbacks never grow at all. And here's the most important insight. The biggest breakthroughs often come immediately after the biggest setbacks, because setbacks force reflection. They force adaptation. They force improvement. They force you to rise one more time than you fall. And it's that one more time that changes everything. When you turn a setback into fuel, you stop fearing failure. You stop being controlled by perfection. You stop collapsing under pressure. You stop quitting early. You become someone who bends but doesn't break. You become someone who adjusts but doesn't abandon. You become someone who moves forward, even from behind. You become someone who transforms setbacks into stepping stones. That person, the one who continues one more time, that person always reaches the breakthrough. Chapter 15. Rebuilding momentum after you fall off. One of the most painful parts of every self-improvement journey isn't the hard work itself. It's the moment you fall off track. The moment you miss a few days. The moment the routine breaks. The moment you realize your momentum has slipped through your fingers and you're right back in the place you swore you would never return to. That moment hits harder than any failure because it feels like betrayal. Like you betrayed yourself. And yet, here's the truth most people never understand. Falling off is not the end. It never was. The real challenge is not avoiding the fall. The real challenge is rebuilding the momentum after the fall. Momentum is powerful, but it's fragile. It takes days or weeks to build, and only a few small decisions to lose. But just because you lose momentum doesn't mean you lose your future. What destroys most people is not the fall, it's the way they interpret the fall. They treat a break as a collapse. They treat a slip as failure. They treat a pause as proof that they'll never change. They let shame distort their vision, fear paralyze their effort, and regret drain their energy. Rebuilding momentum requires understanding the emotional and psychological traps that appear the moment you fall off. The first trap is shame. Shame whispers, "You ruined everything." It tells you that your progress is lost. It convinces you that your effort was meaningless. It punishes you for being human. Shame doesn't want you to restart. Shame wants you to retreat. The second trap is perfectionism. Perfectionism says, if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. It convinces you that restarting imperfectly is somehow worse than not restarting at all. It creates unrealistic conditions for your comeback, which guarantees that you never come back. The third trap is delay. Delay says, you'll restart tomorrow, or next week, or when you feel ready. But the problem is simple. Readiness won't come. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. Next month becomes never. Delay is how momentum dies without you noticing. To rebuild momentum effectively, you must destroy these traps. You must rebuild in a way that feels light, simple, and immediate. Because the longer you wait, the heavier the return becomes. The key to rebuilding momentum is this. Don't rebuild the intensity. Rebuild the identity. Most people try to rebuild momentum by trying to jump back into the exact routine they abandoned. They try to force themselves into full strength immediately. They try to continue as if nothing happened. That's why they fail. Because the emotional weight of restarting is already heavy, and when you add the physical or mental weight of a perfect routine on top of it, it becomes unbearable. Momentum doesn't come from intensity. Momentum comes from continuation. Let's break down the strategy that works, the strategy used by people who build long-term discipline. Pyrames, restart small, smaller than your ego likes. Your ego wants to return at 100%. Ignore it. Restart at 10%. This is how you remove resistance. This is how you avoid overwhelming yourself. This is how you protect your identity. One small action today is more powerful than a perfect action tomorrow. 2. Rebuild the habit, not the outcome. Forget the results for now. Forget the big goal. Forget the pressure. Your only job is to get back into the rhythm of doing the thing. You're rebuilding the habit first. The results will follow naturally. 3. Create a 2-day rule. Never let 2 days go by without touching the habit. 1 missed day is human. 2 missed days is dangerous. 3 missed days becomes a pattern. This rule protects your momentum by preventing long gaps. 4. Attach your restart to a trigger. Triggers are powerful. A specific time, a specific place, a specific cue. When the trigger happens, the habit activates. This reduces decision fatigue and increases consistency. 5. Track the comeback, not the fall. Most people journal the failure and skip recording the return. Reverse that pattern. Track every comeback, every return, every moment you showed up again. This reinforces identity and kills shame. 6. Expect emotional resistance, but don't obey it. The first few days of rebuilding momentum will feel mentally heavy, not because the task is hard, but because the shame around the fall is still lingering. Don't obey the resistance. Observe it. Let it pass. Keep going. 7. Celebrate the restart, not just the success. Your brain needs quick wins to restore confidence. Celebrate the act of rebuilding. Celebrate the identity shift. The restart matters more than the outcome. Now let's explore the deeper truth. Rebuilding momentum is not just about routines, it's about identity recovery. When you fall off, your identity gets shaken. You start doubting yourself. You start questioning whether consistency is something you can truly master. You start telling yourself old stories. I always give up. I'm not disciplined. This is who I am. These stories make the fall feel permanent. But momentum can be rebuilt the moment you decide to create a new story. You rewrite your identity through small, consistent actions. Every time you restart, you tell your mind, I am someone who returns. Every time you continue despite discomfort, you tell your identity, I am someone who doesn't stay down. Every time you choose effort instead of avoidance, you tell your brain, this is who I am now. That's how identity changes. Not through perfection, not through long streaks, not through big achievements, but through repeated returns. People who maintain long-term success do one thing better than anyone else. They recover fast. They don't let shame keep them down. They don't let mistakes define them. They don't overthink the return. They don't plan the perfect comeback. They simply come back. They understand that falling is part of progress, that momentum always breaks at some point, that setbacks are inevitable, that the path to mastery is not a straight line, but a cycle of building, falling, and rebuilding. And because they keep rebuilding, they keep climbing. Because they keep climbing, they keep rising. Because they keep rising, they eventually reach the breakthrough that others quit too early to ever find. Rebuilding momentum after you fall off is not just about continuing. It's about becoming someone who cannot be stopped by interruptions. It's about becoming someone who is stronger than their excuses. It's about becoming someone who trusts themselves enough to begin again. And that person, the one who always returns, never misses their breakthrough. Chapter 16. The long game mindset that breakthroughs require. There is a truth about breakthroughs that most people never accept. The results you want are not designed for short-term thinkers. They are not built for people who expect fast gratification. They are not built for people who crumble when progress slows. They are not built for people who quit at the first wave of resistance. Breakthroughs only belong to those who think in years instead of days, in systems instead of moods, in identity instead of motivation. This chapter is about the long game mindset, the mindset that makes quitting early impossible, the mindset that turns ordinary people into unstoppable ones, the mindset that frees you from the emotional noise of short-term struggle and keeps your focus locked on the transformation you are building. To understand the long game mindset, you must first understand how the human mind naturally works. Your brain is wired for immediate reward. It seeks comfort. It prioritizes the easiest choice. It prefers stability over challenge. In evolutionary terms, this made sense. Survival required short-term thinking, but growth requires long-term thinking, and this creates a conflict inside you. The part of you that wants improvement is fighting the part of you that wants comfort. Most people lose that battle because they never train their brain to zoom out. They see only today, only this hour, only this feeling, only this setback, only this frustration. Short-term thinking magnifies everything. Small problems feel huge. Temporary discomfort feels permanent. Normal resistance feels like failure. Silence feels like stagnation. Slow progress feels like no progress. This is why they quit. Their perspective is too small. To develop the long game mindset, you must expand your perspective. You must learn to look at your journey not as a straight line, but as a long arc. Not as a sprint, but as a marathon. Not as a moment, but as a lifespan. The long game mindset understands that every transformation requires seasons. Seasons of acceleration, seasons of slowing down, seasons of silence, seasons of rebuilding, seasons of repeating the basics. This mindset doesn't panic when progress disappears. It doesn't collapse when motivation fades. It doesn't lose hope during plateaus. It doesn't fall apart after setbacks. It understands the rhythm of growth. Let's break down the components of the long game mindset so you can build it within yourself. 1. The mindset of compounding effort. The long game thinker knows that effort compounds the same way money does. The small actions you take daily accumulate. They grow quietly. They build layers of progress that become visible only after months of consistency. One workout doesn't change your body. One study session doesn't build mastery. One disciplined day doesn't change your identity. But 1,000 of those days reshape your entire life. When you think long-term, you stop chasing intensity and start chasing continuity. DV, the mindset of delayed gratification. People who quit early crave immediate results. The long-game thinker understands that the greatest rewards come months or years after the work begins. They aren't motivated by what they can see today. They are motivated by what they know will come if they stay steady. This mindset protects you from quitting when results are silent. 3. The mindset of emotional stability. The long-game thinker doesn't rely on moods. They expect low days. They expect doubt. They expect boredom, they expect fatigue. And because they expect all of this, none of it surprises them. They don't confuse temporary emotion with permanent truth. They show up regardless. 4. The mindset of identity over outcome. Short-term thinkers chase outcomes. They want the trophy, the result, the reward. But the long-game thinker chases identity. They aim to become a certain type of person, a consistent person, a disciplined person, a resilient person. When identity becomes the goal, quitting feels like self-betrayal, not an option. 5. The mindset of adaptability. In the long game, you will need to adjust. Some seasons demand intensity, some demand patience, some demand rest, some demand learning. The long game thinker is flexible, not fragile. They don't break under change. They bend, and bending is what allows them to continue. 6. The mindset of perspective shift. When you zoom out, a bad day becomes irrelevant. A missed week becomes a learning point. A setback becomes a lesson. A plateau becomes preparation. A slow month becomes part of the journey. The long-game thinker doesn't measure success by the speed of progress. They measure it by the direction of progress. 7. The mindset of unshakable consistency. Consistency is not about perfection, it is about return. The long-game thinker never truly stops. They may slow down, they may simplify, they may adjust their pace, but they always come back. They understand that long-term success is built on the accumulation of comebacks. Now that you understand these elements, let's talk about how the long-game mindset stops you from quitting right before the breakthrough. Short-term thinking collapses under pressure. Long-term thinking endures pressure. Short-term thinking focuses on discomfort. Long-term thinking focuses on direction. Short-term thinking reacts emotionally. Long-term thinking responds logically. Short-term thinking needs motivation. Long-term thinking requires only commitment. Your breakthrough isn't waiting for you to work harder. It's waiting for you to think longer. Consider the moments in your life where you quit early. If you look back now, you'll notice something. At each point where you stopped, you were thinking emotionally, not logically. You were thinking about today's pain, not tomorrow's reward. You were thinking about temporary friction, not permanent transformation. You were thinking about how you felt, not about who you were becoming. Every time you quit early, you collapsed the timeline of your transformation. You gave up because you forgot that mastery takes time. You lost hope because you forgot that progress is not immediate. You stopped because you forgot that success is a slow build, not a sudden jump. But now you know better. The long game mindset forces you to step outside the emotional pressure of the moment. It forces you to ask yourself bigger questions. Who do I want to be a year from now? Will quitting today help that person or hurt that person? Does this emotion matter in the long arc of my life? Is this discomfort temporary or defining? Is giving up today worth losing the future I want? When you start thinking in years instead of minutes, everything changes. Your discipline strengthens. Your patience deepens. Your resilience expands. Your identity evolves. Your mistakes become data, not defeats. Your setbacks become stepping stones, not stop signs. And most importantly, quitting stops feeling like an escape. It starts feeling like a threat to the future you're building. This mindset will carry you through the moments your emotions can't. It will protect you when motivation disappears. It will stabilize you when doubt rises. It will carry you to the breakthrough that short-term thinkers never reach. Because breakthroughs are not built by people who work the hardest. They are built by people who stay the longest. Chapter 17. How to keep going when the reward feels too far away. There will always come a point in your journey where the reward, the very result you've been working toward, feels impossibly distant. It feels unreachable. It feels like something you'll maybe get one day, but not today, not soon, not anywhere close. This point arrives exactly when motivation is weakest, when the emotional fuel has run out, and when your effort feels painfully separate from the outcome you desire. This is the chapter most people live their entire lives avoiding, because when the reward feels far away, quitting feels near, and quitting feels comforting. Quitting feels relieving. Quitting feels justified. But this moment, this exact moment, is where breakthroughs are born. To keep going when the reward feels far away, you must fundamentally change your relationship with the reward itself. You must understand why your brain reacts the way it does, why distance creates discouragement, and how to train yourself to push through the psychological fog that forms between effort and outcome. Your brain is not designed for long-distance thinking. It doesn't naturally see the future. It doesn't naturally connect today's effort with tomorrow's reward. It doesn't naturally understand delayed gratification. Your brain evolved in an environment where survival depended on immediate action and immediate reward. Eat now, hide now, escape now. The human mind has always been short-term by default. This is why long-term goals feel emotionally heavy. This is why far away feels threatening. And this is why, when the reward is distant, your mind begins convincing you to give up. This psychological resistance shows up in predictable ways. This is taking too long. I'm not seeing results. What if I never get there? Maybe this path isn't for me. I don't feel improvement. I'm tired of waiting. These thoughts don't come from truth. They come from impatience. They come from your brain trying to bring you back to comfort. They come from your emotional system struggling with the gap between effort and outcome. To keep going, you must learn to reduce the emotional weight of that gap. Let's break down the strategies that help you push forward even when the reward feels distant. 1. Break down the distance. When the reward feels far, your mind exaggerates the distance. A year feels like forever. 6 months feels hopeless. Even a few weeks feel discouraging. You must shrink the timeline. Instead of thinking, I won't see results for months, think, what can I do today to stay on the path? Instead of focusing on the entire journey, focus on the next checkpoint, the next hour, the next action, the next repetition. Your brain can handle small distances. It collapses under large ones. 2. Shift your focus from outcome to identity. The reason the reward feels far is because you're focused on the reward. Shift your focus. Make the goal not the result, but the identity you are building. When the goal becomes, I want to become consistent. I want to become disciplined. I want to become better. I want to become focused. Then every day becomes a win. Identity is immediate. Outcome is distant. Identity keeps you moving. Outcome tempts you to quit. Detach emotion from progress. You cannot survive the journey if you judge your progress by your emotions. Your emotions lie. They fluctuate. They distort reality. Progress is happening even when you don't feel it. Growth is happening even when you don't see it. Transformation is happening even when you don't sense it. Every rep, every step, every page, every attempt is adding weight to your identity. Focus on the action, not the emotion. 4. Reward the process, not the result. Your brain needs reward. It needs dopamine. If the reward is far away, you must create micro-rewards. Reward yourself for showing up, finishing a session, sticking to your system, keeping your streak, doing one more step. When your brain associates discipline with reward instead of pain, consistency becomes easier. 5. Understand that distance is a filter. The distance between you and your reward is not the obstacle, it's the filter. It filters out the people who quit early. It filters out the people who only act when motivated. It filters out the people who aren't serious. If the reward were close, everyone would achieve it. It feels far because it's meant for the few who endure. When you understand this, the distance stops feeling discouraging. It starts feeling meaningful. 6. Reframe time. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a week and underestimate what they can achieve in a year. Time feels slow when you're disciplined. Time feels fast when you're distracted. The long game belongs to those who are patient. Patience isn't passive. Patience is active endurance. Once you stop trying to rush the outcome, the journey becomes lighter. Sart. Use micro-consistency. On days when the reward feels too far away, reduce the goal to something tiny. A 5-minute workout. 1 paragraph of study. 10 minutes of focus. A short practice session. Micro-consistency prevents collapse. It keeps your identity alive. It keeps you emotionally engaged. Because the truth is this: it's never the size of the effort, it's the continuity of the effort. 8. Visualize the reward correctly. Most people visualize the end result incorrectly. They imagine the success. They imagine the celebration. They imagine the final moment. But visualization should not be about the outcome. It should be about the becoming. Visualize yourself waking up early. Visualize yourself staying consistent. Visualize yourself pushing through low days. Visualize yourself not quitting. Visualize yourself choosing discipline. Outcome-based visualization creates impatience. Identity-based visualization creates endurance. 9. Expect the valley. Every journey has a valley. The valley where effort is high and reward is invisible. The valley where doubt grows. The valley where time feels slow. The valley where you question everything. The valley is not punishment. It is preparation. It strengthens your resilience. It builds the endurance required for your breakthrough. Your job is simple. Walk through the valley. Do not pitch a tent. Do not build a home. Do not settle in the discouragement. Keep walking. 10. Remember who you're becoming. This is the anchor of your endurance. When the reward feels far away, reconnect with the future version of yourself. Ask, why did I start? Who do I want to be? What future will quitting build? What future will consistency create? The reward might be far away, but the person you are becoming is forming right now. Every action shapes your future self. Every day reinforces your identity. The reward is not the finish line. The reward is the transformation. And transformation happens long before the world sees it. Keeping going when the reward feels far away is not about forcing yourself through pain. It's about learning to think beyond the present moment. It's about understanding that every slow step carries weight. Every silent effort builds momentum. Every consistent day stacks toward the unseen future. The distance will shrink. The path will become clear. The reward will draw closer, but only if you keep moving. Chapter 18. Why you break down right before you break through. There is a moment in every transformation where everything inside you begins to unravel. Not physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It feels like you are collapsing. It feels like you are losing control. It feels like your discipline is slipping, your energy is fading, your focus is disappearing, and your confidence is dissolving. This breakdown comes suddenly, often without warning, and it hits harder than any difficulty before it. And yet, here is the truth most people never learn. You don't break down because you are failing. You break down because you are changing. This chapter is about the psychology of that collapse, the emotional and mental breakdown that appears right before a major breakthrough. The breakdown isn't a sign of weakness. It isn't a sign of failure. It isn't a sign that you're on the wrong path. The breakdown is the final wall between who you are and who you're trying to become. Let's go deeper into this. When you push yourself into new levels of discipline, consistency, and effort, you are forcing your mind and identity to operate outside their familiar patterns. At first, this feels empowering. It feels exciting. It feels like you're becoming someone new. But the longer you continue, the more pressure begins to build inside you. Your brain resists unfamiliar patterns. It resists uncertainty. It resists discomfort. It resists anything that threatens the identity you've held for most of your life. And so, as you approach your breakthrough, when your new identity is finally becoming stronger than your old one, your mind experiences a type of psychological overload. This overload is the breakdown. Let's break down what actually happens inside your mind. 1. Your old identity is losing power. Your old habits, beliefs, routines, emotions, and patterns were built over years. They were built for comfort, predictability, safety, and ease. When you challenge them, they weaken. But they don't weaken quietly. They fight back. The breakdown is your old identity screaming for survival. It knows that if you keep going, it will no longer control you. 2. Your mind panics when it can't predict the outcome. The brain loves predictability, but breakthroughs are unpredictable. When you enter a stage of growth where you've never been before, the mind senses a loss of control. This causes emotional turbulence, confusion, fear, doubt, mental fatigue, overthinking, self-criticism, stress. These emotions are not signs that something is wrong. They are signs that you're entering new territory. 3. Your emotional system becomes overstimulated. Transformation demands emotional energy. Discipline requires emotional energy. Consistency requires emotional energy. But by the time you reach the edge of a breakthrough, you've used enormous emotional capacity, and this creates exhaustion. A heavy, overwhelming exhaustion that convinces you to stop. Not because you can't continue, but because your emotional system is overworked. 4. Your mind tests your commitment. One last time. Right before change becomes permanent, your mind creates the strongest resistance it can. This resistance shows up as, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. I'm not seeing results. I'm wasting my time. I want to quit. These thoughts are not truth. They are psychological tests. The breakthrough is on the other side of this test. 5. Your brain is rewiring itself. This is the part almost no one talks about. When you consistently choose new habits, new thoughts, new routines, and new discipline, you are physically rewiring neural pathways in your brain. The brain resists this process because it wants to conserve energy. Right before a new neural pathway becomes strong, the brain enters a chaotic state where it's trying to decide whether to reinforce the old pathway or build the new one. This internal battle is the breakdown. Once the new pathway stabilizes, the chaos fades and the breakthrough appears. Now that you understand why breakdowns happen, let's talk about how they appear in your life. Breakdowns can look like you suddenly losing interest in your goal, you feeling mentally exhausted for no reason, you doubting your entire journey, you wanting to retreat into your old habits, you feeling overwhelmed by simple tasks, you experiencing irritability, sadness, or anxiety, you feeling like everything is falling apart. But beneath this chaos, something powerful is happening. Your old identity is dissolving. Your new identity is emerging. Your mind is reorganizing itself. Your emotional system is recalibrating. Your discipline is strengthening. The breakdown is the bridge between the old you and the new you. And here's the most important insight. The closer you are to the breakthrough, the harder the breakdown feels. Most people mistakenly quit during the breakdown, not because they aren't capable, but because they misinterpret the collapse. They think discomfort means danger. They think emotional overwhelm means failure. They think doubt means they're on the wrong path. They think exhaustion means the goal isn't meant for them. In reality, the breakdown means you're closer than ever. So, how do you keep going when everything inside you is breaking down? Normalize the breakdown. Instead of seeing it as a problem, see it as preparation. Tell yourself, this is part of the process. When you expect breakdowns, they lose their power. 2. Reduce intensity, not consistency. Don't stop. Do less. Simplify. Lighten the load. Keep the identity intact. Even 10% effort preserves momentum. 3. Focus on the next small step. Breakdown happens when your mind zooms out too far. Zoom in. Focus on the next minute, the next repetition, the next action. Smaller focus equals smaller resistance. 4. Separate emotion from decision. Your emotions are loud. Your decisions must be quiet. Feel everything. Obey nothing. 5. Anchor yourself to the bigger why. Breakthroughs require purpose. When the breakdown hits, reconnect to the reason you started. Purpose decreases panic. 6. Rest strategically, not emotionally. Emotional rest is quitting. Strategic rest is recharging. You don't escape the journey. You prepare for the next push. Devon, remind yourself that the mind lies during breakdown. The thoughts in your head are not reliable during the collapse. They are fear speaking, not truth. Trust your commitment more than your feelings. When you learn to see the breakdown clearly, when you understand that it is a sign of progress, not failure, you become unstoppable. You stop quitting early. You stop giving up during the emotional storm. You stop trusting fear more than discipline. You walk through the breakdown. And on the other side, you find the breakthrough that has been waiting for you. Chapter 19. The version of you that quits versus the version of you that breaks through. Inside, you are two versions of yourself. One quits early. One breaks through. They both exist. They both speak. They both influence your decisions. They both feel real. But only one of them deserves to shape your future. This chapter is about understanding those two versions. The one that has kept you stuck for years, and the one that has been quietly waiting for you to activate it. If you don't understand the difference between them, you will always default to the weaker version. But once you learn how they think, how they behave, and how they react to pressure, you will finally gain the power to silence the quitter and step fully into the version of yourself that finishes what they start. Let's begin with the truth. The version of you that quits is not the enemy. It's the old identity. It is familiar. It is comfortable. It is predictable. It is scared. This version of you is built from survival, not ambition. It was created during moments where quitting protected you, emotionally or mentally. It kept you from embarrassment. It kept you from discomfort. It kept you from facing your insecurities. It kept you from confronting your potential. This version lives inside old habits, old beliefs, old memories, old routines. And when you step outside those patterns, it panics. The quitter version appears every time you face resistance. Every time things get hard. Every time progress slows. Every time motivation disappears. Every time the path feels uncertain. It thrives in moments of emotional discomfort, and it speaks with a voice that sounds like truth. That voice says things like, "You're tired. You're not ready. This is too hard. You always fail. You should rest. You don't have what it takes." But that voice is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to protect you from change. It just doesn't realize that the change you want is the very thing you need to survive long term. Now, let's talk about the other version of you, the version that breaks through. This version is not built from fear. It is built from possibility. It is built from discipline. It is built from identity. It is built from self-respect. It is built from the belief that you are capable of more than your comfort allows. This version wakes up when you do hard things. It wakes up when you choose commitment over emotion. It wakes up when you push through discomfort. It wakes up when you decide to become who you know you can be. The version of you that breaks through doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't demand. It encourages. It doesn't panic. It stays calm. It says, "Just one more step. You are stronger than this feeling. You've done harder things before. Stay with it. This will matter later." This version of you is the future self, the one who has clarity, strength, consistency, and confidence. The problem is not that this version is weak. The problem is that it is quiet. It is drowned out by years of listening to the quitter inside you. It doesn't get activated until you make one critical decision. To act based on who you want to become, not who you have been. Now let's break down the critical differences between these two versions. 1. The quitter lives in emotion. The breakthrough version lives in identity. The quitter interprets every emotion as a command. I feel tired becomes stop. I feel doubt becomes quit. The breakthrough version feels the same emotions but doesn't obey them. It acts based on identity, not feeling. 2. The quitter seeks relief. The breakthrough version seeks respect. The quitter wants relief from the discomfort of growth. The breakthrough version wants the pride that comes from persistence. One lives for the present moment. The other lives for the future. 3. The quitter focuses on results. The breakthrough version focuses on actions. The quitter wants the reward now. When results are slow, it gives up. The breakthrough version shows up regardless. It trusts that consistent action eventually brings the reward. 4. The quitter avoids discomfort. The breakthrough version uses discomfort. The quitter treats discomfort as danger. The breakthrough version treats discomfort as information. Discomfort says, "You're growing." Discomfort says, "You're stretching." Discomfort says, "You're close." 5. The quitter breaks routines. The breakthrough version builds systems. The quitter depends on moods. The breakthrough version depends on structure. Systems protect you from emotional collapse. Systems carry you through low days. Systems make quitting harder than continuing. 6. The quitter lives in the past. The breakthrough version lives in the future. The quitter reminds you of every old failure. It drags your history into your present. The breakthrough version sees the future clearly. It pulls you toward what's possible, not what's familiar. 7. The quitter stops at resistance. The breakthrough version starts at resistance. The quitter sees resistance as a sign to quit. The breakthrough version sees resistance as a sign to push. Resistance is the beginning of growth, not the end. Now that you understand the difference, here's the truth that changes everything. The version of you that wins is the one you feed. If you obey the quitter, even once, you strengthen it. You teach your mind that quitting works. You reinforce the identity of giving up. But if you obey the breakthrough version even once, you strengthen it. You teach your mind that you can continue. You reinforce the identity of consistency. You are always building one of the two versions. Every day, every decision, every action. If you do nothing, the quitter grows. If you take even the smallest step, the breakthrough self grows. The key is not eliminating the quitter. It will always exist. The key is starving it, ignoring it, denying it, outlasting it. You do this by choosing the future version of yourself, not the one who has held you back. Ask yourself, which version do I want my life to reflect? The one who quits under pressure, or the one who finishes despite pressure? Which version deserves to shape my future? Which version deserves my energy? Which version deserves to survive? Every time you choose effort over emotion, you cast a vote. Every time you show up on a bad day, you cast a vote. Every time you resist the urge to give up, you cast a vote. Every time you continue despite doubt, you cast a vote. These votes accumulate. They solidify. They transform, until the version of you that breaks through becomes your default identity, and the version quits becomes silent background noise. That is the moment you stop repeating old cycles. That is the moment you step into higher possibility. That is the moment you become someone who is no longer held hostage by their past self. That is the moment you break through. Chapter 20. Becoming the person who never quits too soon. Every breakthrough in your life depends on one thing: the person you become. Not the strategies you use, not the motivation you feel, not the plans you write. Breakthroughs are built by identity, by the version of you that shows up consistently, pushes through resistance, and refuses to quit at the edge. This final chapter is about that identity, the identity of someone who never quits too soon, the identity of someone who sees things through, the identity of someone who keeps going long after the old version of them would have stopped, the identity of someone who becomes unstoppable. Most people live their entire lives on the edge of transformation, always close, never crossing through. Not because they lack talent or potential, but because the version of themselves required for the breakthrough never fully forms. They keep trying to achieve big results with a small identity. They keep trying to follow long journeys with short-term discipline. They keep trying to build a new life with an old mindset. Becoming the person who never quits too soon means rebuilding your identity from the inside, piece by piece, habit by habit, decision by decision, until quitting no longer feels like an option. Let's begin with a fundamental truth. You don't rise to your highest goals. You fall to the level of your identity. Your identity determines your choices. Your choices determine your habits. Your habits determine your results. If you want to stop quitting early, you must become someone who sees finishing as a standard, not an achievement. Someone who refuses to measure success by emotion or motivation. Someone who continues because continuation is simply who they are. So, how do you build this identity? How do you become the person who never quits too soon? You follow the principles below, not as rules, but as foundations for who you choose to become. 1. You make commitment non-negotiable. Most people treat commitment as flexible. They treat it as something that shifts with emotion. They treat it as something they can restart whenever they feel like it. But people who never quit see commitment differently. For them, commitment is identity. Commitment is who they are, not what they feel. They don't negotiate with themselves. They don't debate their goals every morning. They don't reconsider their purpose whenever discomfort shows up. They commit once, and then they honor that commitment daily. 2. You show up, regardless of emotion. Inconsistent people obey their feelings. Unstoppable people obey their character. You will have days where you feel motivated, days where you feel inspired, days where you feel unstoppable. But you will also have days where you feel exhausted, distracted, discouraged, overwhelmed, and disconnected. Your identity is defined by the days you show up without emotional support. Those days carve discipline into your character. Those days turn effort into identity. Those days transform your relationship with yourself. 3. You build structures stronger than your weak moments. Systems protect you. Routines stabilize you. Environment reinforces you. When you build structures around your goals, time blocks, rituals, triggers, checklists, dedicated spaces, you reduce the influence of your moods. You make your path predictable. You create guardrails that keep you from falling back into old patterns. People who never quit don't rely on willpower. They rely on design. 4. You redefine failure. The person who never quits too soon sees failure differently. Failure is not a dead end. Failure is feedback. Failure is data. Failure is information about what needs adjusting. Failure is part of the path. This identity doesn't collapse at setbacks. It rewires. It recalibrates. It adapts. They don't let shame shape their future. They let lessons shape it. 5. You make small steps your foundation. People think big results come from big actions. But breakthroughs come from small steps taken relentlessly. A little progress every day is better than a massive surge once a month. A 10-minute session is better than skipping the day entirely. One page is better than none. One step is better than stopping. Consistency is built from micro-actions, not heroic bursts. 6. You trust yourself more than your doubts. Doubt will never disappear. Fear will never fully leave. Uncertainty will always exist. But the identity you build determines which voice you obey. When you trust yourself, your heart, your capacity, your commitment, you quiet the doubts. You don't eliminate them. You just stop treating them as truth. 7. You define yourself by your return, not your perfect streak. The person who never quits isn't perfect. They mess up. They fall behind. They lose momentum. They fail. They break routines. But they have one superpower. They return. They return quickly. They return intentionally. They return even after long breaks. They return even when they feel shame. They return as many times as it takes. Returning becomes part of their identity. And because they always return, they never truly stop. 8. You stop living by deadlines and start living by discipline. Deadlines create pressure. Discipline creates identity. Breakthroughs don't happen on timelines. They happen when discipline stays steady long enough for the world to catch up. The person who never quits too soon doesn't ask, "How long will this take?" They ask, "How long am I willing to stick with this?" Because they know something the quitter never understands. The result will always arrive, but only if the identity remains intact long enough. 9. You become immune to external noise, criticism, doubt, silence, lack of support, lack of recognition, lack of validation. None of these things stop the person with the right identity. Their commitment isn't dependent on applause. Their confidence isn't dependent on approval. Their consistency isn't dependent on external reward. They move because movement is who they are. They grow because growth is a personal standard. They finish because finishing is their signature. 10. You realize quitting hurts more than discipline. There is pain in pushing yourself. But there is a deeper pain in breaking your own trust. The pain of discipline lasts minutes. The pain of regret lasts years. The pain of effort fades. The pain of quitting echoes. When you understand this, discipline becomes easier. Not because it's less painful, but because you finally see the truth. The pain of quitting is far worse. Once you embrace these principles, something powerful shifts inside you. You no longer ask, "Can I do this?" You decide, "I am the person who does this." You no longer ask, "What if I fail?" You decide, "What if I become someone unstoppable?" You no longer ask, "How long will this take?" You decide, "As long as it takes." This is what it means to become the person who never quits too soon. You stop living as a slave to your old identity. You stop letting emotions dictate your future. You stop giving up at the edge of greatness. You become someone who finishes, someone who follows through, someone who outlasts doubt, someone who survives discomfort, someone who grows deeper than others are willing to go. And eventually, inevitably, you become someone who breaks through, not because the path was easy, but because you finally became the person strong enough to walk it to the end. Outro. Your breakthrough begins the moment you refuse to quit. As you reach the end of this audiobook, there is something important you need to understand. Nothing in your life will change until you decide that quitting is no longer an option, not a strategy, not a backup plan, not a habit you slip into when things get uncomfortable. Your breakthrough begins the moment you choose to keep going long after the old version of you would have stopped. Everything you want, more confidence, more discipline, more consistency, more success, more peace, lives on the other side of endurance. Not dramatic effort, not sudden progress, not perfect routines, endurance. The ability to continue even when you feel confused, tired, bored, uncertain, or overwhelmed. The ability to hold your path even when your emotions try to push you off it. The ability to believe in your future even when your present feels heavy. You've learned something throughout these chapters. The moments you feel most discouraged, most lost, most exhausted, most frustrated, most uncertain. Those moments are not signs that you should stop. They are signs that you're close. They are signs that you're stepping into new levels of identity. They are signs that your old patterns are breaking apart. They are signs that you're entering the stage where breakthroughs happen. You've learned why your mind makes you want to quit right before major change. You've learned how your environment shapes your consistency. You've learned how to rebuild momentum after you fall off. You've learned how to separate emotion from decision. You've learned how to trust yourself even when no one else does. You've learned how to think in the long game. You've learned how to recognize your mental breaking points and move through them. And most importantly, you've learned that the version of you who finishes has always existed. You just needed to activate them. So now the question becomes simple. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you treat it like inspiration, something that fades in a few days? Or will you treat it like identity, something that rewires how you live? Because the truth is this: your breakthrough is not waiting for perfect timing. It's not waiting for motivation. It's not waiting for confidence. It's not waiting for clarity. It's waiting for you to keep going. Your future self is real. The stronger version of you is real. The disciplined version of you is real. The consistent version of you is real. The unstoppable version of you is real. And that version of you is created today by your next action, your next decision, your next moment of discipline. If this audiobook gave you strength, clarity, or direction, remember to subscribe to Prestige Audiobooks for more daily mindset journeys. New stories, new lessons, and new chapters of growth are waiting for you every day. Thank you for listening. Now it's your turn to move. Your turn to push. Your turn to continue. Your turn to refuse to quit too soon. Discipline isn't about punishment. It's about peace. And the moment you commit to staying the course, that peace becomes your new reality.